Donald Trump admitted the Republican Party could suffer a complete defeat in the midterm congressional elections, but stated that he was not to blame for this, instead blaming certain Republican politicians. Donald Trump has effectively admitted that Republicans are facing serious problems in the upcoming November midterm elections. However, he shifted the blame for this onto his own party in Congress. He stated that Americans love Donald Trump but do not love his party. And on the very same day, American media reported that Trump is stuck in a war with Iran with no visible way out. And according to sources in the White House, administration officials are increasingly coming to terms with the fact that the conflict will most likely continue in one form or another right up until the elections. And it's already obvious that this is a war. A war against Iran definitely won't allow the Republicans to win. And therefore, looking ahead, Donald Trump is trying to blame someone else, but definitely not himself. And he claims that if the party loses, it will only be because Donald Trump is not on the ballot. He says, if I were on the list, we would have taken the entire Congress 100%. We would have won every Senate and House seat, but he says they're to blame for everything. Republicans, congressmen, and senators alike who just don't personally listen to him. And as for the theories that blame, for example, the war against Iran, inflation, or gas prices, he rejects all of that. He says, no, Americans love Trump. But there are still many pitfalls here. Let's figure them out together. My name is Pechiy, and before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. This is very important. We are moving toward the milestone of 300,000 subscribers, so I would be grateful for every subscription. So, in today's interview, answering a question about voters' dissatisfaction with the Republican Party on the eve of the congressional midterm elections, Trump said, "It's not me who makes them angry, they're angry at the Republicans, to be honest with you." According to Trump himself, the key question is this: will these angry voters even come out to vote? If he himself, that is, Donald Trump, is not on the ballot, here's another quote from him. The question is whether they will vote, because many of them are very angry at the Republicans, not at me. That's the only thing I can't tell you. I will ask them to come. Well, that is, Donald Trump is sure that he is personally loved despite inflation, gas prices, and the war against Iran. But the Republicans will lose the election because people don't like them. But if Donald Trump was on the party's ticket, then the party would win by a landslide. And it's telling that even Donald Trump's own former chief pollster is noting the Republicans' clear failure. According to a memorandum from Fabrizio World, which belongs to Tony Fabrizio, the former pollster for Donald Trump's campaign, the Democrats could have a 7-point advantage in the 2026 midterm elections. At the same time, 54% of respondents believe that Trump exceeded his authority. And this sense of eroding support is being recorded even among his most likely supporters. And some members of the MAGA movement have even stated that Donald Trump betrayed them, deceived them, and they are preparing their own political project. I want to emphasize again, these are not data from CNN or the New York Times, no. This is data from Tony Fabrizio. He is Donald Trump's campaign pollster. In the same interview, Trump also let slip that there were internal party tensions that are further complicating the situation before the elections. Trump admitted to disagreements with Senate Majority Leader John Thune, saying he has a bad relationship with him, and he noted that he doesn't have enough votes to pass the so-called Save America Act or to overturn the election procedure in the Senate. Trump urged MAGA supporters to direct their anger specifically at the party leader. He said, "Don't be angry at me. Let's all be angry with John Thune." Here it is. Because, he says, it's him who's blocking the electoral reform bill. Although, let me remind you, the Senate has already rejected it. And Trump says John Thune is to blame for this. So, all the criticism should be directed at him. And the rift between Trump and Thune deepened after Trump supported fellow Senator John Cornyn in the primaries in May. At the same time, in the same interview, Trump spoke much more warmly about Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. He said, "Now that's a good guy." Separately, Trump confirmed that he intends to use his super PAC, MAGA Incorporation, in the midterm elections, which has a war chest of $400 million. And within the Republican Party, there is already growing concern about this fund. And the committee is accumulating millions, but so far hasn't started spending this money to support the party's candidates. Trump stated that he personally controls this committee and can use it for any purpose at his own discretion. In general, Trump will decide himself whose election campaign to invest in and whose he can choose not to fund. But voter dissatisfaction may not subside, but instead grow right up to election day. The war with Iran is becoming an increasingly tight trap for Trump, one that the president is trying to find a way out of, but can't. Trump is caught between two options, and both are bad. The first is to accept the emerging temporary deal between Iran and Oman, which would give Tehran full control over the Strait of Hormuz, something it never had before the war. Analysts are calling this the biggest concession to Iran by the US during this entire war. The second option is a new wave of airstrikes, which could pose a serious political risk for Trump on the eve of the crucial November congressional elections. At the same time, it offers no guarantee of success, since previous bombings have not brought Tehran to its knees. Well, no matter how many times he's resumed these bombings, they won't lead to anything good for the US. And as Reuters writes, Trump administration officials are increasingly coming to terms with the idea that the conflict is most likely going to continue in one form or another, and by the time of the midterm elections, meaning it could drag on until the end of the year. And in some states, early voting, let me remind you, starts as early as September, which means voters will be making their choice literally during an ongoing unpopular war with Iran. This creates an additional political risk for Donald Trump, who, after all, was running for a second term with promises to avoid foreign interventions and focus on the economic concerns of Americans themselves. Well, America first, remember? A Reuters source in the Trump administration emphasized that Trump's decisions on Iran are not determined by fluctuating public opinion polls, saying that he doesn't care and is following his own path. Although Trump regularly states Trump has achieved victory in many of his initial goals in the war, the US has not achieved any results. The nuclear program still exists. The regime has not been decapitated. Iran has not surrendered. The missile and drone programs still exist. Almost all of Iran's proxy forces still exist. What did Trump do? He only strengthened Iran's position in the region. In fact, Iran is gaining that very sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, which it didn't have before this war began. What did the US get? So far, nothing at all except expenses for this war. And here, former Middle East negotiator under both Democratic and Republican administrations, Aaron David Miller, summed up the essence of the dilemma like this. It's a menu of bad options, but Trump may have come to realize that he can't allow this war to go on forever. Something has to change, and that might mean recognizing the new Iranian reality in the Strait. And now the question, could Iran be deliberately dragging things out until the US elections? The logic is this: the longer Iran delays the final signing of the deal on the Hormuz Strait, the closer the moment gets to the November elections, when Trump will have to make a decision. And both options for a decision are either accept a humiliating concession for the US by giving control of the strait to Tehran, or start a new escalation right before the vote. Are politically disadvantageous for Trump. That is, the longer the uncertainty lasts, the greater the pressure on Donald Trump to make a decision, whichever he chooses. It will be used against his party in the election campaign. This means that the Iranian side has a direct incentive not to rush to finalize anything. knowing that the election calendar works against the American president, not against Tehran. And now, advisors say that even in the early days of the escalation, Trump's senior advisors privately warned him that it would be difficult to keep the conflict from escalating. And it carries political risks for Republicans in the November elections. This warning was voiced 6 months ago, and according to a recent Reuters analysis, it has not lost its relevance, but on the contrary, has become even more of a reality. But Trump blames not himself for the party's failure, but certain members of the party, and he is confident that he personally is doing everything right. And the Republicans will lose the elections because it's their own fault. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.